Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This is the Cyber Showcase for January, the past, present, and future of TRAC. My name is Brett Rock. I'm your host as usual, and I've got some other team members on here that I'll introduce shortly. Obviously, we want to thank you for taking some time today. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of it with us. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the goal today is, this is kind of a state of the state for TRAC. So for those of you who are users of the TRAC tool, hopefully this will give you a good idea of where we were with the tool, where we are currently, what we've done in the last year, 2023 from a development perspective, and then we will have an opportunity to talk about the roadmap and things like that as well. We're also planning on running some polls and having some interactive pieces of this to kind of get some feel for where you think we need to be headed going forward as well. So we really appreciate you taking a second to give us some feedback there as well. Just some housekeeping before we really jump into things. If you have any questions, feel free to use the GoToMeeting box that has been provided. We'll be happy to answer those at the end of the webinar today, or toward the end anyway. And then we do have a survey, as always, at the end. So once you sign off today, if you don't mind taking just a few minutes, shouldn't take too long, give us a little bit of feedback there as well. We'd really appreciate it. So with that said, again, really appreciate your time today, and we'll jump into things. So first of all, again, I'm Brett Rock. I'm a business development and product specialist here with SBS Cybersecurity. A lot of the time I'm doing these on my own, but today I'm very happy to be joined by 3 excellent team members. I'll introduce them one by one and give them just a quick minute or here to say hello. But first of all, we have Tony Meyer, our Director of Product Management, who is
Hi, good afternoon.
Sky Harbor Airport as we speak. She's waiting to board a flight, but Tony, go ahead and say hello.
I am. Thanks, Brett. Hi, I'm Tony Meyer. Like Brett said, I'm the Director of Product Management. Joined SBS about a year ago to the day, and excited to be with you here today to talk a little bit about TRAC.
Excellent. We also have Nick Podorodsky. He's a resident expert, the one that trained me on the tool about 8 years counting now ago, our Director of Business Development. Nick, you want to say hi?
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for your interest in joining this webinar. Very happy and excited to kind of go through the history and share where the product's been, where it's going, and kind of to build some excitement of where we're going with TRAC. So thank you.
Absolutely. And then finally, we've got Zach Bierman. He's our Software Development Manager. And Zach, go ahead and say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Bierman. Like Brett said, I've been with SBS for about 8.5 years now, and I'm in the software development manager role. So I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to you all and get some feedback from you guys later today.
Excellent. Well, thank you all, and we're very excited. I'm going to try to moderate to the best of my ability, but certainly we've got a lot of expertise on the call today, and I'm excited to have everybody join me. So thanks again. Just quickly from an agenda perspective, we are going to start with introductions, which we're moving through as we speak. We're going to talk about where we were, where we are currently, where we're going, have some takeaways, and then we should have some time at the end here for questions and answers. I actually booked this for 90 minutes. This is usually an hour-long session. I cannot necessarily imagine a scenario where we go too far over an hour. So good Lord willing, we'll be able to let you guys out a little bit early today. But feel free to ask questions, as I mentioned, and we'll be happy to address those toward the end. So just a little bit real quick before we get too much further down the road, I do want to point out that we have later this month coming up Maintaining a Cyber Savvy Culture webinar. That's from our SBS Institute. Our Chief Strategy Officer, Honey Shelton, will discuss real-world examples of cyber attacks and how they have impacted the victim organizations. I think that's going to be, if you've ever been through one of our SBS Institute webinars, those are fantastic, and I encourage you to take a look at that. If you download, I actually took the time, I always forget to do this, but I did put the materials, the slide deck up available for download, and that should be a link that you can use there if you want to take a peek at it. So just quickly, as an introduction, SBS Cybersecurity, for those of you who are familiar with us and have worked with us in the past, we really appreciate it. For those of you who are unfamiliar, we have been in the industry for 19 years. That's something that we take very seriously. We're looking forward to celebrating the big 2-0, actually, I think next month. So that's going to be really cool for us. I think what's important there is we have been in information and cybersecurity that entire time. We're not an accounting firm that decided hey, we can do an IT audit. We're not a managed service provider that said, let us do your network security stuff. Not to knock either of those companies, they're great as well, but this is what we focus on. It's what we eat, breathe, sleep, drink, everything. So it is something that we consider to be a badge of honor. We've got more than 1,400 organizations using TRAC in over 40 states currently. In fact, I believe we have customers in 49 states. So if you know anybody in Idaho looking for work, please let us know. We're endorsed across the country by state banking associations for a variety of services that we provide. Proud to say that we've actually got our host of the monthly Hacker Hour webinar series, Nick Podorodsky. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that excellent event each month. We average about 500 plus attendees where Nick covers a hot topic in information and cybersecurity each month. So if you haven't sat through one of those, I certainly would encourage you to do so. We've got all kinds of other educational kind of badges of honor there as well. And then one thing that I think is really important when we discuss TRAC is in the bottom right-hand corner there. We have a top-tier team of the best experts in the industry that are constantly working on that secret sauce that makes TRAC so great. It's that predefined data, that built-in intelligence that's really going to get you much further along than any other tool that you might encounter in the industry. We put in about 1,100 hours annually just making sure the information in TRAC is updated and ready to roll. So for those of you who are TRAC customers and are familiar with that great intelligence that comes from that team, and anybody who has not used TRAC in the past, certainly that is a big factor in the success of those that are using the tool. Bottom line, you're not going to find a company in the industry that is more qualified and trusted when it comes to information and cybersecurity. I always like to talk before we get kicked off or before we get into the actual TRAC stuff about taking a proactive approach. That's really a mentality that we have as an organization, regardless of what we're talking about. And I think it's even more apparent when we talk about TRAC. We really believe that for you to get the most out of your information security program and for you to not just survive in this landscape of information and cybersecurity that changes on a daily basis, it can't just be the check the box mentality. It has to be more than that. It has to have a plan in place and a plan to improve on a daily basis. And that's really what SBS and TRAC is all about. So you're going to hear us talk a lot about why TRAC is so great and why it can be so helpful. And a lot of that is about how we can make things so much easier for you. But I always like to point out that we really want you to approach this with the mentality of a proactive approach, saying we're doing this not just for the sake of doing it, but because we know if we do it well, we're going to get value out of it going forward. So I always like to start off our webinars with that information. But with that said, let's jump into why you're here. So for those of you who are familiar with TRAC, it's been around for quite a while. We're going to get into the short story of TRAC here in just a moment, but where we were. So Nick, I'm actually going to start with you. The short story of TRAC, SBS was founded in 2004. And we really started talking about TRAC with our customers in 2007, I'm pretty confident. And Nick, just starting with you, I think some people are probably aware of this, but TRAC was built to be used internally, right, before we offered it to customers. So I don't know if you want to talk about what that looked like when we first rolled it out, and maybe kind of what the idea behind TRAC was when we started.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. I love talking about kind of the origin story of TRAC because you get to look back at the real why this is a thing when it started. So if you think about in 1999, when the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act came out, that was a new regulation in the financial industry, especially in banks, where they had to comply with GLBA 501D, which said that they need to document a written information security program that looks at the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of customer information and make sure that the organization is actually protecting that, right? And so 1999, that comes out, and then, a few years later, here comes regulators to make sure that we're actually doing those things. And so in 2004, when the company started, two master's students at a university here in Madison, South Dakota were going through their master's program, and banks were turning to the university because they had no clue how to even do an IT risk assessment. And from there, they decided to create the company Secure Banking Solutions. And the next 3 years, they spent their time meeting with community banks in the area and really getting an understanding of how do we solve this why or the problem. And the problem at that point was compliance, right? How do we solve this problem where we can help our customers become compliant with these IT security related regulations that I don't really know how to do? And so for 3 years, we met with community bank after community bank, and we would start the process of doing an IT risk assessment. And then we go to the next bank and we do a risk assessment, and we go to the next bank and then we do a risk assessment. And we realized as part of delivering our quality of service that, man, this is kind of hard. There's a lot of work, it's time consuming, but at the same time, each of these banks kind of look similar. We identify the same type of assets that they use to do business as far as core banking systems and things like that. They have the kind of the same threats against the business, and they implement, for the most part, the same types of controls. So how do we make this easier for us to provide a good service to our customers? And ultimately, that's where the brainchild of TRAC came along. TRAC actually stands for Technology Risk Assessment Calculator. And the first thing TRAC was an IT risk assessment module so that we could help serve our customers better and create more intelligence built in and automate that process so that way we could save time, money, and resources and give our customers a better experience from that standpoint. So that's where we started, and how the initial goal of TRAC really came about is how do we help our customers become compliant with this regulation. So it's kind of a cool story.
Yeah, and I think it's even kind of remarkable to think about that was going on 20 years ago now, and those two graduate level students are the chief executive of our company and the president of our company. So they've been through the long haul with us and offer extremely good leadership and have hopefully will continue to do so well into the future. Nick, one other question, just kind of piggybacking off of that. I wasn't here for this, but what do you remember about the initial customer reaction as you were starting to roll out TRAC and saying, well, it's something that we've done internally, this works for us, maybe we can offer it to our clients to do it on their own?
Yeah, great question. And I think back, and I don't know if there's anybody on the call from Wisconsin or anybody that remembers a gentleman named Rick McGuigan from the Wisconsin Community Bankers Association, which that doesn't exist anymore. But we were doing educational events with community bankers of Wisconsin, and we came to them. We came to them first, saying, "Hey, we got this kind of cool tool that helps. It's kind of one of the first on the market to do pre-populated data to complete the IT risk assessment and your information security risk assessment and policy documentation, kind of all in one spot. Do you think your member banks would be interested in that?" And what was super helpful for us in the beginning is that we partnered with the associations to push this out to the customers, and it flew off the shelf. It was a requirement from regulation. It was a new regulation, something hot that everybody's talking about, and it was something that, from an initial standpoint, was something that was really wanted and needed because of a compliance standpoint. So from a need standpoint, what was driving that is the whole new regulations of getting our information security programs to a spot to where they're compliant. So it was kind of fun. Today, as Brett said, we're endorsed in 13 different banking associations, and that's just how we have continued to operate, is to run what we do from a service and product standpoint through your member associations.
Absolutely. So we start selling TRAC in 2007, start licensing it to customers. As we mentioned in the brag slide up the front, we have about 1,400 or 1,450 customers using one module or another at this point in time. Around 2018, we start to realize, and I think you'll see, for those of you who are not familiar with the old version of TRAC, I'm going to show some slides here in a second with some screenshots, but we started to realize that we may need to adapt. We may need to spruce up the UI a bit, start to build out some new features and functionality and things like that. So again, around 2018, we start working on a version 2 of TRAC, if you will. Initially, we go out and we start talking to some outside companies about, hey, can you help us develop this tool? But at the end of the day, we wound up staying in-house. And Zach, I'll leave this to you. I mean, we launched TRAC 2.0 in March of 2020, I think. So great timing, right when the pandemic was kicking off. But Zach, I know that at the time, the development team really said, hey, give us a crack. Let us see if we can build it. What do you remember about those conversations? And then kind of what was it like building TRAC from the ground up? Because that's essentially what we wound up doing.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting time when we were looking at originally moving on to a version 2 of TRAC. We recognized it was a need pretty early on. Just the legacy version of the tool is built up kind of on top of that original basis and kept layering on top of it. And it got to a point where it was becoming difficult to support, difficult to get updates to, at least from the technology point of view, making sure we stayed secure and safe for our users and being able to bring quick and adaptable changes. So when we initially were looking at it, we were trying some outsourced providers, and we had actually gone through a few of them, and we just kept having difficulty with communicating the needs of the tool, getting the requirements transferred, making sure that we had proper feedback from those providers, and we're building the right solutions for our users. And after, I mean, it was over a year of this. We finally sat down and said, and talked with the CEO at the time, and hey, we've tried all these different solutions. Maybe we just try something in-house. What if we we don't have anything really to show right now. So what if we just took a module and we said the IT module, since it was one of the most used, and I mean with Nick, that's where the basis of TRAC was. What if we take a month and see how much we can get done in that month? And so we sat the team down and we broke out what we needed to get done for it and started working through. And within that month, we managed to get assets working, their details pages, threats, and controls all working, which was more progress than we had seen with any of the outsourced providers. So from there, we got approval to bring the whole project in, and we had to figure out, okay, how do we balance maintaining the legacy tool while we get the development working here? So we looked at what resources we could bring in. We ended up partnering with a company, Omnitech, here in Sioux Falls, to give us some additional resources to work through things. And we balanced that workload of having some of our team focused on the legacy tool solely in a maintenance and bug fixing route if anything major came up. And then everyone else on the team shifted gears and working on the 2.0 version.
And I think it's, again, I'm going to move forward a little bit and we'll take a bit of a stroll down memory lane for anybody who was familiar with the old version of TRAC. And I say quote unquote old, it's only, I guess 4 or 5 years ago now, we were still doing this. And you can see where, as Zach mentioned, it was time to put this one to pasture a little bit and start working on something new. So again, just you can kind of see, I always talk about, I lived and breathed in TRAC. I've been doing this role where I do a lot of our training, well, some of our training, but mostly our product demonstrations and things like that. I live in TRAC as much as anybody does. And I never, the tool always worked great, but it was clunky and it was not very attractive, and it certainly didn't look very modern. So you can see, for those of you who are familiar with adding an asset, we had kind of this look and this approach, a lot of those little check boxes. We had our threat screen where we had all these little bubbles and dots and all these little boxes all over the place. Adding controls, your check boxes for implemented and change. And then our third-party management screen. Even our logo, I think, is pretty startling to look at in these screenshots. But Nick, I'll go back to you real quick. What do you remember most about Legacy TRAC when you think about where we were previously?
Yeah, when I think about legacy track, you kind of look at how the modules are laid out, and it's not terribly sexy, I guess is what I would say. And although it did its job, it wasn't like as user friendly as some of our competitors. So I was happy to move away from legacy because of the looks, but the power was still there from that perspective. The power behind the intelligence that's built in and the quantification and all that stuff, it was there. It just was not as sexy on the end of it. So super glad to get us to a more modern look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always remember, I heard this a lot whenever we would, on the occasions that we would lose deals to a competitor, we'd hear, what, the tool works great. It looks great. I'm sorry, it works great rather. I like the workflows, but, we weren't, not to be misogynistic, but we weren't the prettiest girl at the dance. And I can't tell you the number of times, and Nick, I'm sure you went through this too, where we had people follow up with us, hey, I want to get another demo of track, or we're going to make a switch because, at the end of the day, the looks, how it looked didn't matter nearly as much as how well it functioned and all that built-in intelligence. So we wound up getting a lot of those customers that originally may have chosen something else for the appearance sake and wound up coming back to us. But I also remember, and Zach, this will lead into a question I've got for you, but I remember there was at one point a YouTube video that somebody had posted of changing pages between one page of track to the next. And I think it was like 2 minutes long. So I know that we had this version all the way into 2007, 2018, Zach. What was it like trying to support and maybe more importantly, try to improve the system as it was in this kind of coding and in this environment?
Yeah, absolutely. It was certainly a challenge. I mean, like I mentioned, there was a lot of kind of older code that was layered on each other, and it became difficult to support just because there was 4 or 5 different tech stacks kind of mixed into one, just causing these added challenges. Some of it, like you mentioned with performance, was something we couldn't tackle without untangling that all, getting it all in a solid structure that we could work and move forward on, getting it to updated tech stacks so we could continue to improve on that and keep up to date, which we have gotten to the point now where we are able to a lot more easily keep to the latest version of things. And I mean, even going to 2.0, performance is always something that we have an eye on and are looking for ways to continue to improve on. So I think as we continue to go forward, we will keep seeing these improvements.
Yeah, I always think about, it's important for me when I'm having discussions with people about track and people that had seen the previous version or operated in it, that all the great stuff, the workflows, the built-in intelligence, that stuff that we'd had, Nick, as you mentioned, almost from the beginning. But when we moved into the new version, what it really allows for, and Zach, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, is just more, it's more agile, right? And I think that's the thing that I was always excited about, is as we continue to grow and evolve, and we look at some of the stuff that we did in 2023 and some of the things we're planning for the future, I don't think it probably would have been possible if we had kept this same construct. So it's always fun to look back, but I think we're all very happy with where we've wound up at this point.
Absolutely.
So with that said, where we are currently, in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Zach. He's going to give you a rundown on all the different great things that we accomplished in 2023. But I just do want to talk about, Nick highlighted this earlier, and I think this is important. When we rolled out track originally, a lot of it was about compliance because people didn't know how to be compliant. They didn't know what they needed to do or how they needed to do it. And I think as we look at it now, 20 plus years later, that need for compliance is still there. You have to be compliant, but a lot of us have gotten to the point where we've found a way to do that. So a lot of what we've really started to move toward when it comes to messaging about track and talking about it and where we think the benefits are is more around the idea of, okay, I can do this, or maybe I can't. Maybe I don't have the time. I've got 15 different hats that I'm wearing. I can't find the time to do this, or I don't have the personnel to help me with it, or we don't have the expertise. If we're honest with ourselves, sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. But maybe the biggest point for a lot of folks that I talk to is, yeah, I can do it. I can do it in a spreadsheet and I can probably get by for some period of time, but I hate doing it that way. I can't stand going in there and updating the spreadsheet and all that stuff and not getting any value out of it at the end of the day, right? I can do it, I can check a box, but I'm not actually getting a return on my investment either. So we really have moved to more of the idea of, how do we help you unleash efficiency? We talk to our customers. They say they can do risk management tasks and track up to 5 times faster than they were using a spreadsheet. For those of you who are familiar with the tool and use more than one module, you know that a lot of our modules work together. So we're eliminating that duplication of effort and not having to have you do all this extra work in different spots. For those of you who are looking at budgets pretty closely, this is basically like adding a virtual security expert at a fraction of the cost. It really helps you drive better decision making when it comes to getting the most out of your security dollars. And then also, and I think this is an important factor, as we're trying to grow, I don't think I've ever talked to an institution or organization that said, what, we're fine, we're either going to stay where we are or we're going to get smaller. Most organizations and institutions are constantly looking for growth and looking to find a way to do that securely, and TRAC can really help with that. So, Nick, I do want to just kind of ask a couple of questions that you can help out with. Obviously, TRAC's come a long way. We looked at some screenshots for that. With cybersecurity changing as quickly as it is, what do you think it is about TRAC that makes it so relevant still?
Yeah. So again, I think you look back in the origin story of why was compliance. I think that we talked a little bit about that. Compliance is still a thing today, but about 10 or so years ago, what we truly realized was the growth in the number of in the technology in general. With technology comes cybersecurity, and the growth and the sophistication in cybersecurity attacks that continue to grow in this ever-changing cybersecurity landscape. Now the kind of the problem or the why is more around, how do I make the right decisions at the right time before something happens? And how do I, you talked a little bit about the proactive versus reactive. And the first step in every proactive approach to cybersecurity is the ability to identify and understand risk. And if you want to kind of peg TRAC as something for now, and Tony and Brett and Zach might hate me, but inherently TRAC is kind of the risk assessment master, right? What the very first fundamental step of a good information and cybersecurity program that's proactive, that can help you identify where your problems and issues are and the controls that you could possibly put in place in the future to reduce more risk for the organization, is a risk assessment. And that is still a very relevant problem that can be solved by TRAC from an organization enterprise standpoint to make sure that we can identify risk and make decisions on that. It all comes back to the risk assessment. The other things that you mentioned, Brett, is, all right, well, I can do a risk assessment, but how fast can I get it done? But also, when I get it done, how do I know I'm right? Like, I just spent all this time on a risk assessment on a spreadsheet, and I just made a bunch of guesses. How do I even know that's right? What's beautiful about TRAC is that it's a community model. Everybody uses the same model, the same weightings, the same threats. You can print off peer comparison reports, and so that when it comes to the results, you can be pretty rest assured that the results are pretty good, and the assumptions and the weightings and everything built in is pretty accurate, and you know that examiners are going to be okay with that because it's a community model. And so it's solving the old problem with compliance, for sure. Bring the examiner in, show them that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But it's also what it's supposed to do is help us truly identify risk. If I'm going to implement a new technology, if I'm going to implement a new application, or if I'm going to hire a new marketing company or whatever I'm going to do, that the first step is, all right, let's identify risk before we make that decision. Or if the president comes home from a conference and there was a really cool salesperson from SBS Cyber, Nick Podorowski, said this new product is the best. It'll mitigate 100% of your risk for the organization. And I go back to my team and say, we have to get this new technology. Well, the first thing that we should do, all right, let's run it through our risk assessment, see if that really does do that for us. So it is solving the same problems, but really now it's how do we make better, smarter? How do we communicate that better? How do we quantify risk and really manage it in one location? So it's still a great solution out there for both.
Absolutely. Well said. For those of you who are not familiar, we do have 11 modules of TRAC in total. The 3 that I highlighted in red up there, the IT risk assessment, vendor management, and business continuity management, are kind of considered to be our core 3 modules. Those are ones that you're probably hearing the most about from examiners, but we have all kinds of other risk assessment modules. We've got an audit module. We've got a way for you to risk assess your commercial customers and help with documentation. So all of our modules, I say this a lot, built to do exactly what they're going to do and do a great job at it. But we do believe that for your program to work in the best possible way, these things do need to work together. So just wanted to point out that there's all kinds of different things that we can do with this tool. And if you ever want to see any of those in action, feel free to let us know. With that, I am going to turn it over to Zach, kind of. And Zach, I apologize. GoToMeeting has changed some things apparently since the new year. So I'm going to have to click through this for you, but I'll do my absolute best to keep up with you. But Zach's going to take us through kind of a year in review, talk a little bit about some of the different things that we accomplished in 2023. So Zach, I'll let you get started and I'll pull up the first one now. How's that sound?
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. So as we were looking at 2023 and laying out our roadmap, one of the biggest items we knew we needed to tackle was a content management system. And it's something I want to go into a little bit more detail in just a bit. But this first item here was one of the points that was really needed in order to shift over and work on that content management system. So the first item I'll talk about is our custom asset types rework. So we had custom asset types working in the 2.0 system. However, it had a kind of wonky user experience. It didn't really match up to what you got when you created a new asset. So you would create these types, you'd build them out, but it had not the right look and feel, and especially when we were looking at creating a content management system within the tool that we want to use this as a framework to base it off of, it would be really challenging to do. So what we decided to do was take what we have for assets, what you would typically do with your process, being able to add threats or controls or remove them, assigning the weights, assigning those impacts and probabilities. And we took that exact same structure and converted our asset type creation system to use the exact same UI and UX. This was a project we undertook towards the beginning of the year to kind of set the stage for future plans. But we found that the UI here works a lot better in terms of just the ability to understand the workflow and having that workflow follow through when you actually create an asset from it.
And I just to clarify this is, obviously when you get into TRAC, if you're in our IT risk assessment module, for instance, you're risk assessing assets. We have about 180 to 190, give or take, assets that are predefined, built into the tool, ready for you to use from the jump. But the idea behind this is, hey, if there are assets that you think we're missing, this is your opportunity to add them. And I think to Zach's point, whenever I would demo this before we made this change, I would always tell people, if you need to add customized assets, you can absolutely do that. But I would recommend you reach out to us to get you started in that process, because it's not quite as easy as it sounds. And I think, Zach, I think you guys have done a great job in really making that process much more accessible moving forward.
Absolutely.
Here's another one you got.
Yeah, so this next one is a feature that we're looking to actually expand on as capacity allows going forward. But we get a lot of requests over the years to add a specific field to, in this case, we're looking at our risk assessment module. So IT, BCM, ERM compliance, and BSA. They'll ask for maybe individual one-off fields, something that's really impactful for their specific situation, but may not be impactful for a lot of our other organizations. So as we got these requests, a lot of times it was kind of piling up of, okay, what do we see a lot of? Can we add a new field for it? If there is a case for that, we do look at adding that new field. However, there became a lot of one-off requests, and we didn't like just giving users the solution of, oh, add more information to your descriptions or your notes, because it's hard to parse through all that. So what we decided to do was implement a comment system, and this is something you can find within any of your assets in any of those 5 modules I mentioned, and it's a note button up to the left-hand side of the delete button when you're inside of an asset that'll pull up a comment list where you can add and edit and delete comments, that whatever information you want to make sure you track on a given asset. And it can be used for workflow, for process. Say there's some information you need to update some of the control notes, you can throw a comment on for there. Or if there's something you want to note, like who your contact is. Anything that you want to make sure you have noted, you can just throw and use as a flexible notation system.
Absolutely. And I've seen customers already using this for a variety of different ways. And I think it's, as you mentioned, something that we can continue to build upon going forward. So I think that's a great change too. All right, this is the big one you wanted to talk about, so I'll give you some space here.
Yeah, so the content management system has been something that's been needed in TRAC for quite a while. Our previous way of implementing new content, and we do get content changes out fairly frequently, but our content team would go through, create and review and approve large changes of, hey, we got these new threats, we've got new controls, these are all the assets they're applicable for, here's their weights, here's all of the information for it. And our previous implementation, the dev team would then have to take that and create a bunch of manual scripts to change all of those, not only in our default information, but to make sure those changes could get out to customers' active assets, which it was an incredibly time-intensive, as well as very test-intensive process. We had to do a lot of testing to ensure there wasn't going to be any incorrect modifications, make sure data goes through correctly, updates are correct. And it was really hard to also cross-train any other developer in on doing this. So what we wanted is a way for our content team to be able to build in the system updates for any given asset or process or what have you, and create new threats, create new controls, modify the mappings, and be able to create those in the system, be able to approve and review them in the system, and then with the push of a button and an additional sign-off, those updates can go out to users directly, automatically apply to all of their existing assets, update for any new assets that want to be created. So we spent a ton of time working through this, building some additional systems in place to showcase what's new, what's changed, get more insight into the updates that are coming to you. So we spent a large chunk of the year working on this, and we're still in some additional phases of testing. This is something that, because of the ramifications it has, we are making sure that every possible edge case is accounted for, and really just as thoroughly vetting the system as we can, and then looking into this next year, start utilizing this to push out content updates, have quicker turnaround. If there's a new threat that pops up, we don't have to wait until we have a large chunk of changes to go out. We can get really quick turnaround and adaptability on the changes in the cybersecurity landscape.
I'm actually going to go live to the Sky Harbor Lounge. Tony, I didn't prep you for this question necessarily, but maybe you want to jump in here. I know that this is something that's on your roadmap going forward, and obviously the tool is only as good as the information that's in it. So you want to talk a little bit about why this is so important?
Definitely. So TRAC is only as valuable and useful for our users as the content is up to date. We talked about the value of track being in, you know, it's like your cybersecurity expert. And so everything's changing on a rapid pace. So it's important for us to be able to react quickly when new threats come out, when there's new controls to add, things like that, be able to react very quickly. So this is critical for us to be able to turn those changes around quickly for our users and make sure that information is always kept up to date.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about, again, I apologize, I sent you some questions I was going to have, but do you want to talk a little bit about how we roll out those changes to I'm sure some current customers maybe glance at the email they get and delete it, but do you want to talk a little bit about the methodology we use for getting this information about changes out?
Yeah, definitely. So our development team works in what are called sprints. So they're just 3 week groups of work. So we prioritize our work into those sprints and make sure that we have enough for our developers to get done in a particular sprint within their capacity. So within each sprint, we have a variety of different tickets. At the end of that sprint, we kind of wrap that sprint up into a release. So every 3 weeks, we'll have a new release pushed out. It typically happens on a Tuesday evening. So you'll see those changes within track on a Wednesday morning when you go to log in. And then we always summarize those with release notes, which if you're signed up for those notifications in track, you should receive those. And that just highlights the different changes that we've pushed out in those release or in that release. So looking ahead a few slides, I'll talk a little bit about our roadmap and talk about kind of how those different features are rolled out there. But yeah, like I said, typically it's in a 3 week sprint, and you'll see in the release notes what was released. So you'll be able to go in and see what was rolled out as part of that particular sprint or that particular release.
And I would think as we're changing content here and there and people see we don't want people seeing their risk scores change or anything like that without having any idea what's happening. So I think if you are somebody who doesn't pay attention to those emails or those release notes, I would certainly consider it as we continue to push forward this content management system.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely. I mean, and those are also helpful. Sorry, those are
Yeah.
also just helpful to see the new capabilities. So the things that Zach's talking about that we release, like those are all highlighted in the release notes. So that's a really helpful way to see what new capabilities and functionality you can take advantage of.
Absolutely. All right, Zach, how about bulk user reassignments?
Yeah, I'm going to shift over to some of the more recent features we put out that some of the users joining us may not be aware of. So over the years, one of the issues we've had is we have an employee leave and they're assigned to a whole bunch of different things, and we need to figure out, okay, how do we reassign those items to another user that's taking over those responsibilities? And so this was our solution, at least in a MVC capacity, really looking at what the kind of requirements are to make that process easier. So now any admin in the track tool that has the ability to modify user permissions can get this reassign permission and reassign all assignments from one user to another selected user. And it gives you some details as you expand out each section on, okay, what are the items under this category that this user is assigned to? It's a much quicker and simpler process for just that transition of user responsibilities. And one of our goals towards the end of this year, looking into next year, is again, how do we make some of the actions, especially some of the larger workflows within Track that require a lot of modifications, a lot easier for users to be able to change and a lot less time consuming.
And I think this comes up and becomes important as for those track users that like to pull other people into the process and use that ownership field. And really, I always talk about the many hands make light work kind of approach. If you are pulling people in, there's turnover, and Joe Smith leaves, and suddenly we have to figure out how we reassign everything. We've made it a much easier process than we did in the past. So I think that's excellent. How about your multi-select filters?
Yeah, so I believe 2022, maybe 2021 is when we got filters in place in the tool. And they're really a kind of simple solution to make it a lot easier to find assets or vendors or what have you that you want based off more selected criteria. We're continuing to expand out that functionality. We're reviewing it to make the UI and UX of it a lot easier for users to manage and get rid of any confusion that come up in that process. But one of the expanded functionalities we've added within the last couple of publishes is the ability to multi-select options on the filters. So previously we only allowed one selected option. So for example, if you were looking at tags, maybe you look at all vendors that had the critical tag. Or what we wanted was, it doesn't really make sense to only select one in those cases. You may want multiple selections, and to do that in the previous system, you had to just add a new line for each and every one, a really tedious and laborious process. So a quick solution to that was adding in the ability to select multiple options. You can select what you want included in your search, and just make sure you're getting filtered down to a more manageable list, or the list that you need to see to make good decisions.
So this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other, one of the ones you talked about previously, but bulk updates in your risk assessment modules.
Yes, this goes directly hand in hand with what I mentioned on the previous item of bulk user reassignment. When you're setting up a new account in TRAC, or even if you're managing an existing account that has a whole bunch of assets, it can become time consuming and difficult. I know our global controls page has a ton of use for especially large accounts in a way to manage controls a lot quicker and easier. And so we're continuing to look at ways where we can handle updates in bulk, handle managing things from a higher level to make some of the more individual changes a lot easier. And so this was one of our approaches, and you'll see more of this coming to other modules as we look forward. But we have added with, I think just this last publish, the ability to bulk update assets, processes, categories in all of our risk assessment modules. So you'll see fields on here. You can update the owners, additional owners, vendors, tags, locations, the review date, and the end of life date. It gives you options for replacing existing values, clearing existing fields, adding to the existing fields. So say there's just a couple tags you want to add to, you can do that with this, or removing from. So if there's like a multi-select list of items, you can remove specific items from that list on all selected values. This works by selecting assets on the details or on the main list page of assets. So you can select all if that's the option you want, or you can select individual ones. And especially it's useful with the filters. You can filter down to a list that you know you want to modify, select all of that filtered list, and then apply updates through there.
And this may seem like a small thing or something that, oh, maybe that's useful, but I can't tell you the number of times that we've had people say, hey, I need to make a change to this. I don't want to have to go through and change every single one. Is there a way to do this quicker? And I think this is that way. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
And I probably should also mention, if you are a TRAC user currently and any of the stuff we've talked about, you say, wow, I didn't know TRAC could do that, or I don't know how TRAC does that. We do have an incredible client services team that would be happy to answer questions you might have. So certainly feel free to reach out to them if you need to get a little assistance there. Obviously, these were not the only changes we made in TRAC. I do want to point, I'll kind of just pull these all up at once here, but I don't know, Zach, you don't have to go through every single one of these, but anything that stands out in terms of something you're excited about.
Yeah, just to quick touch base on these, we did a lot of login and security improvements throughout the year. Obviously, security is at the forefront of our industry, and making sure that our users have a safe environment to work in and put their information into. So we tackled really hard looking at our login process and continued to make security improvements throughout that whole process. We also looked at UI enhancements, and that's something, especially as we look into next year, and Tony will probably talk a bit more about this later. We're constantly looking at ways that we can improve the UI of the tool. How do we make the experience of utilizing the tool better and easier for our users? So that's going to continue to show up here. We did BCM dependency mappings, the ability to have more intuitive mapping of business processes across multiple different modules and an easier way to work through that. We've updated our vendor management question set, our primary management question set in the tool with some new guidance. As well, we've updated some of the CA track functionality. There's a lot of things there I don't want to get too far into. And then persistent sorting. So we added the ability, when you go back to a page, it will remember what some of those options you chose for sorting are. And this is solely on the main list pages right now. We're going to bring it to other list pages going forward, but just make the process of going back to your work a lot easier.
And one I'll just highlight here, I think they're all great, but for those of you who are not familiar with our CA track module, that is our commercial account takeover risk assessment, essentially module, where you send out surveys to your commercial customers. It allows you to get some information about them, both from an inherent and residual risk perspective, but also provides some education, white labeled by the institution or organization. Hey, this is how you're doing, some things you might want to do to improve going forward. But that's a module that I always thought was very valuable. And I think with the changes we made this year has only made it more valuable. And I think it'll be, if you haven't looked at it in the past, I think that'd be something to consider in 2024 if you've got a lot of commercial customers. We also have a user group. Tony's going to talk about that as well. But Zach, here were some of those user group features that we rolled out. I don't know if any stand out here.
Yeah, so the big standout here to mention is just we have user groups twice a year. And I don't have the dates offhand, but maybe Tony can get those. But one of the big features we like to do there is give users the ability to vote on features they want to see. So we're always looking for feedback for the tool, ways that we can continue to improve, and features that you guys want to have in the tool to make your lives easier. So these were just a few of the examples of what was voted on this year, adding last modified dates into risk assessment risk assessments. So you can see on different items when they were modified. Update indicators for threats and controls, additional business continuity filtering, which added, I believe, 2 new filters for business continuity, and then creating custom scenario types for business continuity plan testing.
Yeah, so for those of you who either are using business continuity or might be interested in it, that does allow you, we have a testing portion of that module where we predefined some different scenarios you can use, but that last one I think is really exciting because it allows you to have more flexibility there in creating those. So Zach, I know we're going to be turning over to Tony here in a minute, provided she's not in row 14F or something, but how many tickets did we close last year? I think you had that number, you sent it to me earlier.
Yeah, over the last year, we closed out 1,230 tickets, which was up a little over 400 items from the year before. So we had some really solid progress this last year.
And would it be fair to say, and correct me, you can tell me I'm wrong, wouldn't be the first time, but would it be fair to say that in the past, a lot of our focus was on the things we need to do to make track work, bug fixes, that sort of thing. And it really does feel to me anyway that 2023 marked kind of an inflection point there where our focus really shifted to enhancements and how can we take some of the feedback we're getting from our users and really start to build track for the future. Do you feel like that was kind of the way it looked?
Absolutely. We've had quite a few enhancements come in over the years and continue to come in that we want to make sure we can get implemented into our system. And with the previous few years, we've been focusing on bug fixing, making sure the tool's stable. And 2023, one of our big focuses was shifting over to enhancements. And as we go forward, that is going to continue to be where we're focused on. Obviously, fixing any major bugs that come up and solving user issues. But yeah, focusing on how do we improve the tool? How do we add more functionality?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zach. I really appreciate that. That's a pretty good feel for where we are currently. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about where we're going. So I imagine most of the people that signed up for today's webinar, this is the part you were most excited for, as much as we enjoyed going back in time a little bit. But Tony, I'm going to actually turn this over to you. And again, I apologize. I have to click through for you, but I'll do my absolute best to keep up with you here. So
Oh,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, no worries at all. So as Brett had mentioned earlier in our discussion, SBS is really making a very focused and continuous investment into growing track. It's a big focus for SBS, just making sure that we're providing an innovative product and that we continue to build on the product that we have today and make it more useful for our users. So in 2023, I just want to talk a little bit about the additional investment that SBS made. Um, so the start of that was moving into more of a product management team model. I mentioned I'm new to SBS, so my role was started just beginning of last year, about a year ago. So in January, I joined the team as the director of product management. What that meant was we have our development team. Obviously, Zach has been managing the development team for quite some time. We have client services, and this really brought them all together under one product management umbrella. And so a lot of software companies, people that offer software products, have kind of a product management focus to really focus on that product strategy. So the role of a product team and a product leader is to really drive that, where are we going with the product? How do we grow the product? Continue to monitor market conditions and make sure that we're serving, understanding our market so that we build the right things and that we have a good intentional plan of growing the product. So building out that product roadmap that Zach mentioned to make sure that we're adding the features and functionalities that our users want. So we obviously started with the director of product. We pulled the team together. Then later in the year, we added 2 new roles with our developers specifically, and we hired 2 front-end developers. So their focus is really on the front-end part of the application. So that's where our users interact. So adding the focus on the front end is going to help us provide a more user-friendly application. We talk about the user interface, making sure that we provide an intuitive tool, that it's easy to use. So that's really going to be a focus for us looking ahead to 2024. And more so on that, towards the end of the year, we grew the team by adding 2 new roles. Sandra Zhu joined our team in November. She is a dedicated UI UX designer. So Zach mentioned how important it is for us to continually improve our user experience and the user interface. And so she is really focused on that. That's her sole role. She actually has a master's degree in user experience. So she's got a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of experience just utilizing software applications and making sure that our user interface and our user experience is designed in a way that drives just ease of use and allows our users to complete their work in track with that most logical workflow and the fewest number of steps possible. So she's been a really exciting addition to our team along with the 2 front-end developers. So obviously that's a big focus for us, making sure that our tool is easy to use, that it's intuitive, and that you can get in and get out quickly with what you need to do. We also added a product owner role. So Sandra and our new product owner, her name is Afway. She also joined our team in November. She had about 6 years experience in product ownership. And a product owner role is really somebody that works with both our internal and external stakeholders. So customers, as well as people like Brett and different folks within the SBS organization to define the product requirements. So when we think about building, say, a new module within Track, Afway is the person who will really dig in and say, okay, this is what the module should do. These are the key features and functionality it should have. So she's really in charge of defining requirements for the Track product. So with all those new roles, that was kind of the start last year. We've really got a well-rounded product team, and we're going to continue to grow the team in 2024 so that we can make sure that we continue to add those features like the ones Zach talked about that we added in 2023. We saw the growth of what we accomplished from 22 to 23, and now we expect to see even more of that in 24 with all of these new positions.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on that with the question, I mean, it feels to me, being here for almost going a little over 8 years now, actually, that a lot of this, especially 3 new positions in the team, it's kind of a maturation of Track. Does that feel accurate? Kind of just, this is a tool that we know has, it's worked for a long time, can only get better from here, but we need to kind of mature how we look at it. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely. I think, these are really logical positions for a software product. SBS is in a unique position because we have our services team, which is obviously a very big part of our SBS company. And then we also have the software product. And so as we mature and try to grow the software product portion of SBS, these are really key roles to kind of make sure that we're building it in the right direction, that we're understanding the market, understanding our users, and building the features and functionality that they want to see.
So with these new positions, do you mind just kind of talking a little bit about how the other pieces fit into this, the roles that we've had previously, maybe like what our team looks like as a whole?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, the development team specifically, so we have Zach obviously as the manager. We currently have one senior developer, Devin on our team, who has a ton of experience, just brings a great, well-rounded software development experience to the position. We're actually hiring a second senior developer position currently. So those two roles, the two senior developers, really focus on the technical direction, how we should be building the features that we're going to build from the technical side. We also have the two new front end developers that I mentioned, and then we have two more junior developers. They've both been on the team for about 2 years, and so they both continue to really grow in their roles and add a ton of value to the development team as well. In addition, we have a QA engineer, so his primary focus is just doing QA testing on the new development that we put out, the new code, just to make sure that we don't push out bugs, do things like that within the software. And so he is continually testing our code base to make sure that it's solid and stable. We also work with a partner, a really solid development team. They're a technology company, so we can augment our team. So if we have specific projects that come up, we can scale our team up and down utilizing those resources as well. So we have a senior developer on our team right now from our partner as well. And then obviously we have client services. They provide support to all of our products. So Lisa is our manager. We have 3 folks on the client services team. And then also as part of our product team, we have Cindy Nielsen, who manages client experience. And so her main focus is just making sure the experience with SBS meets our high standards, that our customers get the experience that they expect from SBS. So that's really kind of in general the entire product team.
Well, and then the best demoer on the market too. So that's on the sales side though.
Exactly. That goes without saying.
Yeah. So Zach, I'll just throw this over to you. I imagine as we bring on new team members and help on the development side of things, you must wipe your brow a little bit and breathe a sigh of relief. Can you speak to kind of how that increases our ability to enhance track as we bring on more folks that can help out?
Yeah, I mean, one of the core things that enhances is just our capacity as a team. We've got a pretty tight-knit team and a lot of really strong developers on that team, but there's only so much time in the day, and so having some additional hands on deck to be able to take some of that capacity, that's one of the primary growth angles. But even beyond that, every new developer we've brought on has brought a ton of experience and knowledge to our team that we can fold into our tool, add additional functionalities, add in better processes, build a stronger team from it. So there's really a lot of benefit from expansion, as well as even outside of the individual developers coming on, adding UI and UX design and product owner. Bring in a really good perspective that we did not previously have, and some abilities to grow and, as you mentioned, mature as a software development company.
Well, as someone who's in track more than probably anybody else, I can tell you the UI UX designer is. I'm a little anal retentive, as anybody who's worked with me, talked with me, met me probably knows, and there's always a little thing here or there that throws me off. So I'm excited about that as well. Tony, I'll move forward. This is the roadmap. So why don't you talk us through this a little bit?
Sounds good. So we've talked a little bit about the roadmap throughout this session. So as a growing product, most software products have kind of a 12-month rolling roadmap. So we try to focus and really be intentional about what our development team is going to focus on throughout the year. So this is really just a high-level view. It shows, kind of the larger items that we're going to be focusing on for 2024. Just as a side note, we always put efforts towards support and maintenance, so that kind of goes without saying. As support tickets come in, we analyze those, and the high priority ones obviously go right into the queue. So that's always a big part of our overall capacity, is just making sure support and maintenance is taken care of. And then we've talked a little bit about this throughout the session, but as a security company, we're always focused on making sure that our technology stack is kept up to date and that we have the latest version of the tools we use. So the software tools that we use to build Track, we have to continually update those to make sure that they have the latest security patches, that they're supported, things like that. when Zach was talking a little bit about the legacy version of TRAC and how we kind of built on top of older code, that can kind of get a software product into trouble. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our tech stack clean and that we're doing those updates. So you'll see in the support and maintenance category with our TRAC roadmap, we do have some code updates that we're working on here in this first quarter of 2024 that'll just help make sure that we're maintaining that tech stack and always providing the latest technology in a stable platform as part of TRAC. We have single sign-on in queue for Q1 and early Q2, so we anticipate that'll be out within the first half of the year. We're really working hard to define kind of how we approach that, because obviously we work with a lot of different banks who have different requirements with single sign-on. So we're going to planning on rolling that out first half of this year. And then also kind of similar to support maintenance, content and reporting. We've talked a lot about that today. We have the CMS system. There's also different components within TRAC that we will be updating through the development team. So that's going to be something where we always focus on making sure that we have the latest content, that we always update our reports so that we give you guys those options as far as the reporting that you need for your teams. And, just as kind of a side note, like with any business, I'm sure as you guys kind of focus on your own businesses, we think a lot about being agile and adjusting our priorities based on the changing market conditions, new technologies that come out, and of course feedback from our customers. So our roadmap adjusts based off those conditions. So the second half of the year is more of a projection than set in stone, because obviously, like I said, we review new technologies, we review market conditions. So some of the things that we are looking at, we want to provide a really robust dashboarding tool within TRAC. We're also looking at launching a new module this year, so that's a really exciting prospect for us. And we are going to get to a slide coming up here where we'll ask for your input as well. So I left the new module a little bit high level, but that was intentional because we're going to be asking for your feedback in this area. Some of the other things that we're thinking about, when we talk about new technologies, AI is certainly something we're all hearing a lot about. And so we're spending a lot of time just exploring different use cases to implement AI capabilities within the TRAC product. So that's an exciting concept for us, just based off the amount of data that you have in your TRAC org and being able to easily access that data and pull together a summary utilizing AI. So that's an exciting prospect for us that we'll continue to monitor this year and just explore different use cases for how we might incorporate that into TRAC.
Yeah, I think, I sit in these meetings where we do the sprint meetings where we'll talk about, okay, this is what's coming up in this sprint. And a lot of the time it's technical code stuff and my eyes kind of roll in the back of my head a little bit. But, Zach, you sent me the numbers. I know these are for last year, but the performance of TRAC has just increased night and day compared to what it used to be. I think the numbers you sent from last year were 87% improvement in performance in the vendor module, about 90-something% in the IT risk module. So those aren't necessarily the sexiest updates, but certainly they go a long way in making the tool better. So we always appreciate those. Dashboards we've talked about for quite a while. How do we consolidate information, give you a snapshot of what's happening, what's due, what you need to be focusing on. So I think that's really exciting. And then, as Tony mentioned, we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the different modules that we're thinking about, and kind of get some feedback from all of you about where we might want to head there. So lots of really exciting things on this roadmap. Here you go, this next slide, Tony.
Great. So, we've talked a lot today about, how we want feedback from our users, and really as a product management function and as a product organization, we really encourage feedback and ideas from our customers. That's how we, build a better product. That's how we make sure that we're addressing the needs of our customers. So the feedback loop is really critical for just driving the overall product strategy. We get a lot of ideas internally. Obviously, we have a lot of our own internal SBS people that spend a lot of time talking to customers. And then we also really encourage and welcome and, try to capture ideas from our customers as well. There's a few ways we do this. So we've mentioned a little bit about the user group. We hold that twice per year. It's a great opportunity for users to learn more about TRAC, voice your opinions about improving the product. It's a really good kind of conversational opportunity for just learning more giving us feedback, things like that. If you're not familiar with our user group, our next session is March 20th, so you can mark your calendars for that. It's typically about a half a day. We start about 9 o'clock Central Time in the morning, go till about 1 o'clock, but there's a lot of great information in there, and we'd encourage you to join if you haven't. You can find out more information. We do have a TRAC Pros user group on LinkedIn as well, or you can reach out to client services or any of us as well for more details on that. You're always welcome to submit ideas through our client services team. So typically when an idea is submitted, our client services team will, reach out to the rest of the product team, Zach, myself, just see if it's something that's been previously submitted or if it's a viable idea for TRAC. We do have some technical limitations. There are some things that we're just not able to do in TRAC. So they just do initial check to see if that's something we could do. If so, we create a ticket in our ticketing system, our tracking system, and then it goes into further review. It's, myself, the product owner, Zach, and we continue to talk about, who are the customers that this would benefit? What's the level of effort? Like, is this something that's, going to be a really big level of effort for a dev team, but it's really only going to help one particular customer? That's weighed a little bit differently than something that's going to help, a larger percentage of our customer base. So we really kind of try to weigh on a lot of different factors. And once that's decided that we're going to move forward with that, that's when we assign it, on the roadmap and onto a sprint to get done as well. So like I said, you can always talk to our client services team if you have ideas for how to improve TRAC. And then we also have focus groups that Brett leads. It's about a 30-minute to an hour call. I usually sit in on those, somebody from the product team, and we just go through a variety of questions, ask for feedback, and it's more of a one-on-one opportunity to voice thoughts, concerns, ideas, things like that about TRAC. So if you're ever interested in participating in one of those, you can reach out to either Brett or I to schedule a call, and we'd love to kind of pick your brain for 30 minutes or so. Obviously, as a product person who just, I thrive on trying to figure out ways to build a better product. That's our focus. We want to make sure that we're getting feedback from our users so that we can build the best product that we can for our customers. So with that, we actually want to kind of capture some feedback from you today, if we can. So we've got a couple.
But just some potential new modules. I'll pull them up on the screen here, and then we'll have a poll that I launch in just a second. I've got to figure out the best way to do that, but I'll let you explain a little bit about each of these, and then we can pull the poll up.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we're focusing our roadmap on some new modules. We want to add some additional capability within TRAC. So Intrex is, they came out with the new FDIC came out with the new question set in September for Intrex. So that's a new module that we have on our list. NIST is something that, there's a lot of focus on NIST, new question sets, new standards coming out in 2024. So that's a potential for us as well, for people that want to focus on the NIST standards. User access review is one that we've talked about internally. So being able to see what software applications, what tools your employees have access to in a quick view. So if you've got a user that potentially leaves the organization, you've got that tracking right in TRAC, and it ties in nicely with single sign-on. There's some nice synergies that we can gain where you've got all your information in one system when we've got single sign-on. And then incident response is really kind of a full-fledged incident response module. And obviously we have a lot of that data in TRAC today. So that's one where we can pull data from several other modules within TRAC to provide a pretty robust incident response tool.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to do my very best here to launch a poll. We'll see if it works out. So here we go. I told everybody earlier on that the GoToMeeting changed some of this stuff on me, but here we go. So if you could pre-order one of these modules, we're not going to hold you to this, so don't worry about it. Which ones would you select? And you're welcome to select more than one on this list, and we'll give you 20 seconds or so to fill this out. We've got some internal bets going on about who's going to win this one. It's we'll see how it works out on our side of things. All right. So with about 63% of the vote in, we have the user access review is the #1 piece here. So incident response following that, and then Interact and NIST. So again, we've got another poll we're going to put out here in just a minute, but really appreciate you taking a second to vote on that one. So let me bounce back, if I can, to our slide deck here. Okay. There we go. Easy enough. So again, thank you for that, Tony. Here are some, not necessarily new modules, but some new functionality, some new options that we're looking at. And I'll let you talk a little bit about these as well.
Yeah, so sorry for the background noise, apologize for that. But so we've talked about, implementing some generative AI functionality. Obviously, that would all be contained within your particular org, but being able to kind of sift through the data that you have within TRAC and ask questions, generate data from your particular data that you have in org. Single sign-on is one that we've talked a little bit about. Customizable dashboards, being able to have access to the data that is most important to you, and then cyber security assessment tool enhancements as well. So those are all some of the additional new options that we're discussing, and we will jump into the poll again, I believe, Brett.
In just one sec, I am going to take a second. I'm not going to try to push anybody in any direction here, but a couple of these that stand out to me, the AI functionality. If we can get you to a point where you can ask TRAC, what controls should I put in place based off of my risk assessment, and it can tell you that, I think that's a really cool functionality, and hopefully the direction we're headed with TRAC in the future. And then the CAT enhancements. For those of you who are not familiar, we do have the cyber assessment tool as part of TRAC. Currently, there's a free version. So if you wanted to sign up for it tomorrow, you're welcome to do that. Just let me know. But we are looking at some ways to enhance it and maybe tie it to some of our other modules to integrate and kind of find some ways to make it a little bit more effective in terms of, okay, we finished it, now what? So there may be some additional enhancements we can provide there. So with that said, I'll try this one more time. I'm going to show my taskbar. That time it didn't work as well. Give me 1 second here. All right, so we will launch the last poll we've got here. So if these offerings were available to you to be added to TRAC for an additional fee, not 100% sure what that looks like, and again, we're not holding you to anything here. Which ones are you most likely to add? And again, you're welcome to pick more than one. All right, so this one's pretty interesting. I don't know that I would have picked this 100%, but the customizable dashboards is kind of a runaway winner, 50% of the vote. Might be reaching out to some of you folks to see what you might want to see in that dashboard. So again, we're always looking for ways to make TRAC better, and that's one that we're certainly interested in. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and end that poll. Okay, let's see here. All right, so with that said, we're coming up. We actually went a little bit longer than I thought we were going to. Tony, Zach, anything you want to add? I'll start with Tony. Anything you want to add before I get to some takeaways and see if we got any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think we kind of covered everything we meant to. And as always, if there's questions, if there's suggestions, feel free to reach out.
Zach, anything you want to add?
I would echo the same sentiment as Tony. I really appreciate the chance to talk with everyone here and love hearing your suggestions for what we can do to help make your lives easier.
Absolutely. And I know Nick would have liked to have had some parting thoughts, but he had to jump off to another meeting. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from him at some point in the hacker hour or something like that. But just quickly before I see if any questions came in, and Tony, if you have to run for a flight, certainly Zach and I can handle it. Just some takeaways, right? TRAC has come a long way from where we were even a few years ago. And I think, that is something that we showed you. I can't even begin to tell you the looks I would get sometimes in 2018 when I would pull up the old version of TRAC and start going through it. So We've come a long way from a UI perspective, from a performance perspective, but a lot of the great workflows, the information, all that stuff has stayed relatively the same. With that said, and I think everybody would on our side would agree with this certainly, but the platform is the best in the industry in providing frustration-free risk management. That's at this point, you probably are compliant, at least in the short term. Maybe somewhere down the road, you're going to get told you have to move to something else. But we do believe that this is going to make your life much easier through all the predefined data, the built-in intelligence, the workflows, the reporting capabilities, the data you're going to be able to pull out of this. We think this will really help you if you're not already using it. That doesn't mean, though, and I think both Zach and Tony would say this or would agree with me here, that doesn't mean that TRAC's perfect. We recognize that. We think we've made some really good strides, and especially in 2023, we think we rolled out some really exciting things. But more than anything else, I would take away that we're making the investment necessary to continue to make TRAC better. We're bringing on brand new roles, new people, new developers. We're doing everything we can to really make this as effective a tool as we possibly can. As Zach laid out, last year was a very busy year for our development team working on TRAC. It was a busy year for our content development team, the experts that work on making sure TRAC is updated and all the information is accurate. And that is something that we did really well. We spent a lot of time on. So hopefully you felt that. This year we'll continue that trend. We're certainly not slowing down. We've got the order from on high that TRAC, we need to, this is going to be an emphasis for us going forward, making it a better tool, making it more effective, more efficient, and bringing on new users. So if you haven't seen TRAC, if you haven't looked at it in the past, if you're not using it currently, you'll probably be hearing from us, but certainly feel free to reach out if you want to take a look. And then lastly, your voice matters. I think this is such a critically important point, and Tony laid it out really well. We want this to be a tool that's built for you. In fact, we have some reviews on some of the different websites that are out there, Capterra and a couple others. And one of the ones that always resonates with me is there was a review from one of our users that said, I used other tools in the past. I've been using TRAC for the last couple of years, and this is the one that feels like it was built for me. And that's really what we're trying to do. So whether it's the user groups and voting on different features or functionalities, whether that's reaching out to us with enhancement requests, hey, wouldn't it be great if TRAC could do this? No matter how pie in the sky it sounds like, we want to hear it because we want to see if we can do it. And then, as Tony mentioned, we do reach out and try to sit down and hear what you have to say and how we can get better from some of those focus group calls. So your voice matters to us. We want this to be a tool that's built for you and that's built to do exactly what you need it to do. So with that said, I'll take a look here in just a second to see if there are any questions, but I'll also plan on keeping this slide up. If you have any questions for me, Tony, Nick, Zach, any of us, we're all available. I put our information up here. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have, whether it's today, a week from now, a month from now, whatever the case may be. So let me go ahead. I don't know that I saw any questions come in. I also don't know how I would know based off this new way of doing it. Actually, we got a bunch of them. So let's see. We're going to go through some of these. Tony, again, if you have to jump off, feel free to do it. But I'm just going to go through some of these. I'll put our screen thing back up here in just a minute. But is this cloud-based, and do we have an on-site version is one question. Right now it is cloud-based, and I imagine that's the way we will stick with, Zach. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so probably going to be the way it stays, just for ease of use and frankly making sure that you can access it wherever you need to. Do we sell TRAC as a complete package, or can you buy the first 3 modules? The answer is absolutely. You can buy you can license modules individually. You can license groups of modules. You can license all the modules. However you want to do it is completely up to you. We do believe that our modules are built to work really well together. So there's an argument that the more you've got, the better. But certainly, you can license individual ones, whatever ones you think might be helpful. There's a couple of questions on pricing. I'll be happy to follow up with those offline. Zach, here's one that you might be able to handle. TRAC does not currently, well, the question was, does TRAC have a mobile app that could offer some sort of CISO morning brief or something like that? I know we don't currently have a mobile app. We're we've made some strides in making it available via mobile devices, but do you have any feelings on that?
So right now, TRAC does not have a mobile app, and I don't know if we would look at a mobile application separately. We have had discussions on it. However, with the hiring of our front-end developers, one of the items that they've been working on as they've been reworking some of our front-end pages and our front-end technology and processes, we're keeping mobile in mind. So you actually might have already seen some improvements if you ever utilize TRAC on a phone or a tablet, and see that the page layout is handled significantly better than it was just a few months ago. So it is something we're pushing towards, especially with the UI UX designer coming in. We're going to continue to make sure that, I mean, a lot of technology is moving to a more mobile focus. So we want TRAC to be available on whatever device you need it to be available on.
Tony, I don't know if you're here, but you have anything you want to add to that if you are?
I believe Tony hopped off already.
She did have to go. Okay. Here's one. This will be the last one I answer here. There's a lot of questions we'll be happy to answer offline. I'll reach out to everybody that's submitted one, and we really appreciate the interactivity. Zach, I'm going to leave this one to you because I don't know what it means. Is this written in Python? And as to scaling, how many users can use it simultaneously?
It is not written in Python, and currently we don't have any limits on the number of simultaneous users. It's a multi-tenant application, so you can certainly have as many users as you need within your organization at a time. I think the only caveat I'd throw there is if you're all pulling really large reports at the same time, there might be some slowdown. But it should certainly work with multiple users involved in the system.
Absolutely. And it's important, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but we do not charge a per user fee. So you can have as many users in TRAC as you need to, as few as you want. You can get very granular. We have a very good roles-based permission system, as well as more flexibility there too. So I'm a many hands make light work kind of guy. I like to have other people in the process with me, and certainly TRAC affords that. So wanted to mention that as we were answering that. With that said, like I said, there were a few other questions more specifically about pricing and things like that. I'll be happy to follow up with those directly. Really appreciate everybody's time today. We wound up going almost the full 90 minutes. Hopefully this was helpful. If you don't mind taking that survey for us, we really appreciate it. Zach, since you're the last man standing, I will thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate everybody's time, and look forward to talking to you all next month on the next Cyber Showcase. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.